Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for our Safer Recruitment webinar and Q&A session. We hope to answer as many questions as we can for you. But before we start, I would like to give you an introduction to who EPM are. So EPM is an accredited award-winning education service business. We've been at the forefront of the education sector for more than 25 years now. Our focus is 100% within the education sector. We support more than 2,300 schools, academies and multi-academy trusts nationwide. Our presence actually spans across 100 local authority areas. We have an excellent 96% retention rate, which is due to our collaborative approach, resulting in a long-term partnership. Today's meeting will be chaired by our Safer Recruitment Manager, Beth Alberga. I'll just give you a little bit of background around Beth. So Beth's background in safer recruitment spans over 10 years. Her education experience includes work as a qualified trainer, having completed the Safer Recruitment Consortium training, as well as their years of service with EPM. She's part of both regional groups and national forums, sharing practice and developing policy, including part of the DFE working group formed during the consultation for the KITSE 2016, 2018 and 2019 documents. So what I'll do now is pass you over to Beth Alberga and she can kickstart the session for you.
Hello everybody, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Beth Alberga, the Safe Recruitment Leader here at EPM, and over the last few months we've seen schools dealing with safe recruitment in new and innovative ways, and with the ever-changing government advice, we need to continue to be flexible with our recruitment strategies. We must always adhere to the government advice and any specific regional advice, and at the moment this allows for increased options when carrying out ID checks, such as viewing documents via video link, and these will continue to be reviewed as we move forward. However, anybody who is recruiting using this method should now ensure that you ask the employee to bring their original documents on their first day back to school so that you can verify and copy and retain the ID documents on their personnel files. I think it's worth mentioning at this point that if you've got any questions, use the question and answer facility, and I'll do my best to answer these at the end of the session for you. So we just move on to our next slide now. Thanks, Melissa. So keeping children safe in education. Just so that you don't see me continually, Melissa, would you mind turning my video off? And you can see my lovely face at the end, all right? So, as you know, keeping children safe in education, also known as KITSE, has been updated, and you should be referring to the 2020 document from now on. To allow schools to focus on responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Keeping Children Safe consultation, which was suspended on the 31st of March 2020, has now been withdrawn permanently. Therefore, the changes in this edition are quite minimal. The Department for Education have made changes in 3 circumstances. Firstly, where legislation has required it, for example, reflecting mandatory relationship education, relationship and sex education, and health education from September 2020. Secondly, where they have helpful additional information that will support schools and colleges protect their children, for example, with mental health, domestic abuse, child criminal and sexual exploitation and county lines. Finally, they've provided clarity which helps schools to better understand and follow their guidance. And for the start of the autumn term, you will now need to ensure that all employees have received Part 1 of Keeping Children Safe in Education 2020, and some schools may feel a declaration is suitable to record this. You should also ensure that any policy that refers to keeping children safe is referring to the most up-to-date version. If we can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. Now, Part 3 of Keeping Children Safe in Education, which refers to safer recruitment specifically, remains unchanged. Therefore, there are no surprises here. However, there is still plenty to do. This is a great time of year for you to do a health check on your single central record to make sure all new employees are entered onto it and that any outstanding pre-employment checks are followed up as soon as possible. You should also ensure that any leavers are archived to a tab of your single central record. It's also important that you individually risk assess your volunteers to check whether they will be engaged in regulated activity and to determine whether they will require a DBS recheck. If a volunteer who is engaged in regulated activity has had a break of 3 months or more, which may have been due to the pandemic, they will require a recheck. You will also need to risk assess your casual staff. If someone is registered with a DBS update service, this negates the requirement for a recheck, as you are able to check their DBS status with their permission. It's also important to bear in mind that employees that have been furloughed are not considered to have had a break in service, as they are under a contract of employment. Therefore, they are not required to have another DBS check. It's also important to be aware that Ofsted will be visiting schools during the autumn term to check that they're getting back up to speed. Now, during September to December, Ofsted will be conducting what will be known as visits rather than inspections, which will not be graded. And the aim of these visits is to reassure parents and the public about how schools are managing their return to full-time education of their pupils. Inspectors will work collaboratively with leaders, and Ofsted will report back to the nation on the national picture across England. The visits will be piloted with volunteer schools from September, with a full inspections due to commence from January 21. However, this will be kept under review. As you know, the pandemic is changing people's processes all the time. So if we can move on to the next slide, thank you. This slide is just a reminder that all the appointments are subject to satisfactory pre-employment checks, and these are: for an identity check, you can use the .gov.uk website for guidance on what constitutes an identity check, but we would normally go for the primary DBS documents such as passport and driving licence in the first instance, and when you work your way down the list of documents if these are not available. Now, right to work is one of the big issues that I find when I'm auditing schools. Now, due to GDPR changes, schools are often under the impression that it is against GDPR guidance to retain documentation relating to a person's identity. This is a myth, as you have a statutory requirement to retain right to work documentation for the duration of that person's employment with you, plus a further 2 years. You must complete the Home Office Right to Work checklist and retain copies of the original documents to support right to work requirements. If you have completed the Right to Work checklist in accordance with the guidance and retain the documentation in the event that you are requested to show them to demonstrate that you have performed the Right to Work check and retain a statutory excuse against a civil penalty. You only need a standalone barred list check if an enhanced DBS check, which should include a barred list check for all those engaged in regulated activity, has not been received before the person starts their appointment with you. It is not true that you must have a separate barred list check and an enhanced DBS check. All new employees must have a DBS check. And remember, if someone is registered with the update service, then you're able to check their status with their permission, as long as their DBS certificate they are presenting is for the same workforce, such as child workforce, and the position is for a similar position you are recruiting them to. You must retain a copy of the outcome of the check and update your single central record to reflect the update service was accessed. A prohibition check is required for those who are carrying out teaching work. For maintained schools, the Specified Work Regulations 2012 prevent an HLTA or a TA from carrying carrying out teaching work, as they will be under the direct supervision of a qualified teacher. Academies have greater flexibility to use their support staff in a teaching capacity. You are therefore required to complete a prohibition check on any support staff that could be carrying out teaching work via the TRA website and update your single central record accordingly. If you become a customer of EPM, we will carry out a teacher prohibition checks as part of our pre-employment responsibilities towards you, but we would not do them for support staff, as we would question why they are not on teacher terms and conditions. As you know, certain positions within Academy also require a Section 128 check to be completed. And these positions are all members of the proprietor body, including governors if the governing body is the proprietor body, if the proprietor is the governing body, the head teacher, any teaching positions which carry a departmental headship, and any member of the senior leadership team. It's worth noting here that anyone who is subject to a Section 128 direction is also disqualified from holding or continuing to hold office as a governor of a maintained school. Qualifications. These only are required for the professional qualifications that are required as detailed in the person specification, and they should be recorded and the school should use the TRA website to check the validity of QTS certificates when presented. Now, disqualification under the Childcare Act 2016, the Department for Education issued updated guidance for schools as of the 31st of August 2018, and this is where disqualification by association was removed. The regs now apply to anyone working in childcare under the age of 5 or in wraparound care where the children are under the age of 8. Finally, some applicants also require a certificate of good conduct as they have worked or resided abroad. If the employee is on a Tier 2 or Tier 5 visa, then as part of their visa application, they are required to provide a criminal record if they have lived abroad for 12 months or more in the last 10 years. For all others, you must seek a certificate of good conduct, ensuring all overseas countries have been included in the check as far back as the country of origin. If we could move to the next slide, please. Now, the changes will significantly reduce the level, changes in the filtering rules will significantly reduce the level of information that a candidate will need to disclose during a job application. Now, in January 2019, the Supreme Court rejected the government's appeal in defence of the criminal record scheme. The judgment confirmed that the disclosure system was unjust and recommended an overhaul of the filtering system. In July this year, the government laid a statutory instrument to amend the relevant provisions of the Police Act 97 and the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act 1974, Exceptions Order 1975. This was then approved by the Parliament in September 2020, and the new legislation will remove the requirement for automatic disclosure of reprimands, warnings and youth cautions, remove multiple conviction rule, which will require automatic disclosure of all convictions where the person has more than one conviction, regardless of the nature of their offence or sentence. And it's also going to be the removal of adult convictions after 11 years and removal of youth convictions after 5.5 years. Now, these changes will significantly reduce the level of information that the candidate will need to disclose during the job application. In turn, it will affect the questions employers can ask about a candidate's existing member of staff's criminal record, which will impact other recruitment processes. I think EPM will suggest that revised questions for standard or enhanced disclosures should ask the following 2 questions. Do you have any unspent conditional cautions or convictions under the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act 1974? And also, do you have any adult cautions, simple or conditional, or spent convictions that are not protected as defined by the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act 1974, Exceptions Order 1975, Amendment England and Wales Order in 2020. At the moment, the current filtering regime is still in process, but it will be changing by the end of this year. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So to ensure that you are Ofsted ready, we have got several options available for you. So it's a really good time now to review your recruitment panel members and assess whether they have received the appropriate training. Due to natural staff turnover, you may find that some of your trained team have left. So please be aware that one person on every recruitment panel needs to have received the appropriate safe recruitment training, and thus this needs to cover the whole of keeping children safe as a minimum. If you require safe recruitment training, then please get in contact with us and we can provide either face-to-face or online training. Alternatively, if you need a refresher, we can also provide a webinar for you. We can also support your safe recruitment practice with our safe recruitment audit. So where we will undertake a full review of all your checks and processes and provide you with a comprehensive report containing expert and clear advice, guidance and recommended actions on how to improve your compliance to meet your safeguarding recruitment obligations. We also deliver a safe recruitment admin workshop, and this is where those who are responsible for processing DBS applications and also completing the single central record requirements will have a very detailed workshop on how to make sure they understand the checks that they are being asked to complete and how to put them on the single central record effectively. We also provide a leading DBS disclosure and barring service and safe recruitment admin workshop. So if you'd like to find out more, just speak to our consulting team here at EPM, which you can find on the email in the corner down there, and we will be able to point you in the right direction. So I'm hoping if you haven't got any questions now, because it's such a massive subject, safe recruitment, I should hopefully be able to answer them now for you. So if you would like to fire away any questions, I'll do my best to help you. And it doesn't look like we've got anything at the moment. So I think I might mention here for you at the moment that there's a bit of legislation that has come in that is regarding Brexit, which is our new hot potato. As you know, we will be leaving the EU on the 1st of January, and it's just become apparent that the EEA sanctions and restrictions that are available via the TRA website are going to be no longer supported by the TRA website. So it's really important that you continue to seek certificates of good conduct for overseas teachers, and you make any further checks you think appropriate. It's not clear whether or not EEA sanctions or restrictions should still continue to appear on the single central record. We believe it possibly will do because it was a legislation, it was in legislation at a particular time, but there may well be a new additional column that you will be required to have on your single central record as a replacement, depending on what the Department for Education bring in. So that's worth mentioning at the moment as well. So we've got changes in filtering rules that could affect your recruitment documentation. So you need to make sure that anywhere that you are mentioning filtering rules, when the legislation does change, you have updated those to represent the correct filtering guidance, because not only is the length of the time that you can filter convictions will be changing, it's also the amount of conviction information. It used to be only one, now they will be filtering off multiple convictions. So you need to be aware of that when you're mentioning it in your criminal disclosure form and also your application forms. So have we had any further questions come in? I don't think. No new questions at the moment, so I hope I've answered everything. The Safer Recruitment Audit basically looks for effective safer recruitment practice. So we will look at your website for evidence of safe recruitment practice. We will then look at your personnel letters to interview to make sure that they are compliant. We'll then look at your single central record to make sure that that is also compliant. And then we will look at a cross-section of personnel files to see if we've got evidence that we should be finding in your personnel files. For example, if someone requires a risk assessment, so if someone has a positive DBS, have you got a risk assessment on file to support that? And also, if you have, I've just got a question that's come in. So when does the filtering guidance change? We haven't got an absolute date yet, but it is expected before the end of this year. So if you subscribe to the Department for Education updates, they will let you know when that is has changed. And of course, if you subscribe to EPM, we will always keep you updated as well. So getting back to the Safe Recruitment Audit, it just looks for evidence of, have you done what your safe recruitment training has advised that you do on your website? So it's what message do you send potential applicants? Do you have a strong safeguarding culture? And can I find evidence of that on your website? And then it's all about, can we equally find evidence of all of this practice in your files and also your pre-employment checks that you send out to everybody? And it's a very good health check on where you currently are, and you always do what you always do until you're told something different. So it's very good to have a fresh pair of eyes, look at your process to see if you are actually going in the right direction. You're welcome, Olivia, you're welcome. So if there are any other questions, I will hand you back over. Am I handing you back over to Wilkins? Yes, so I'm going to hand you back over to Wilkins now, and thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Really appreciate it.
Hi there, thank you very much. I hope you found that useful and informative. So what we'll do after the session, we'll follow around with a recording of this session today. So you've got that for your records. And also, if you do think of any questions, I know what it's like after you think, oh, I should ask this, I should ask that, feel free just to pop us an email or reply to the email that we're going to send you across, and we'll be more than happy to provide any additional support that you may require. As you're probably aware, EPM in general, we also provide consultancy services along with Safer Recruitment. So if you ever needed any additional support with any of those services, even ranging to health and safety, payroll and HR, again, please do get in touch. But we hope you enjoyed the session, and we'll certainly follow up with the recording of this as well. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Bye-bye.